Hello, everyone. Today, Busihub is going to cover cloud computing and managed services. We have Adeola from AWS and Darius from Devo team. They will be talking about their topics and we will be coming up with some questions at the end of the session. Thank you very much. I just hand over to Adeola and Darius.
Okay, we're going to start with a few questions. Cloud compute, one topic, and one is cloud managed services, because one is needed to another. And we start with basic topics, but the idea is to reveal them and to create further conversations, further meetups in relation to different interesting topics, which is interesting to all the audience, everyone. As I chose to start to ask questions to my colleague, I will. Okay, history of cloud. Yeah, you probably remember, like 2006, Amazon launched AWS, Amazon Web Services, and back at the time, we've been joking about that you know, cloud is something like a remote computer somewhere, and it doesn't mean anything. It's like just someone's computer plugged somewhere. Maybe you can reveal what is a cloud computing, yeah?
Sure, and thanks, Darius. Maybe I should start off by kind of giving a bit of my background, just where my experiences have come from, and obviously I'm speaking as an individual, not as a mouthpiece for Amazon. But yeah, I've worked at Cisco, Oracle, Microsoft, and then AWS, and the same themes kind of evolve where, because of the demand for people to want to consume IT services based on their own needs and when they want to, led to this. And as you rightly said, it was launched with or rather, it came to life with the launch of the EC2 service by Amazon Web Services. And that was them building IT resources internally to kind of meet the demands of the Amazon business. So cloud computing, simply put, is the delivery of IT services, such as compute, storage, database, software, and even networking over the internet. And that's where, the fact that you consider it as being a virtual service that is run from remote data centers come from. And what you're trying to do is essentially avoid storing and processing data locally on a physical server or computer within your data center as a business. That's the most layman definition that I think can be put forward for the different types of organizations we engage with.
But Adeola, you can reveal also what are the types of cloud computing services, because I think during this 15 or it's kind of how many years, 12 years, 13 years period, so there is now we have multiple type of the cloud services.
So obviously the three main types of services that you would speak to when you talk about cloud computing services is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. Nowadays, you also get things like data as a service. So far as it's a service and it's accessible over the cloud, then it's doable. From infrastructure as a service, you're really talking about the ability to access virtualized computing resources. And those could be virtual machines, storage, network, everything that has to do with building your IT environment, but in a virtual environment in the cloud. Of course, this allows you to quickly provision the IT infrastructure for you to then run different applications on. And there are providers like AWS, Microsoft, GCP that provide these services. From a platform as a service perspective, this is where you're creating kind of like the complete development environment available for you to then run different capabilities that you're trying to do or workloads that you're trying to deliver. And that could expand from the tools that you need, the frameworks, the libraries that you can use to then develop or even test different types of applications. And then, of course, the last but not the least is software as a service. And this is where the full application stack is delivered to you by different cloud service providers for you to then be able to use these applications and pay for them as you use. So different pricing models for this, but essentially you're not paying for things like support because all that is handled by the provider. Support, infrastructure, security, and even updates of that software. A great example from my previous employer would be Oracle ERP SaaS versions, Microsoft Office 365 and the likes.
Okay, now we know what are the types, but these different types has different architectures, yeah? What are the different type of cloud architectures you know and you can offer for us?
Yeah, so obviously just at the start of it is public clouds, where this is kind of like the scenario I just depicted, where the entire service or types of services that you want to consume are provided by third party via the internet. And most businesses that consume this kind of services are digital native businesses. And then, of course, on top of that, rather beyond that, is the private cloud, where even though these services are on-demand services, they are run from within your data center. And then I think the third is the hybrid architecture, where it's a combination of these two for consumption. But more recently is that you're now finding customers who are considering multi-cloud architectures, where they determine what kind of workloads they want to consume and the environments they want to consume them from based on the services that are available from the specific provider that they're going to.
What I discovered in this audience, many people has been working in a financial institution or has been responsible for financial institutions. What are the type of the cloud or architecture of the cloud you would offer or suggest to a financial institution?
Yeah, I want to twist that question a bit because I think it's now even the customers, especially the banks, that are being more specific around the kind of architectures they want.
Yes, that's
So
true.
obviously they start off by, looking for public cloud services to be able to deliver some capabilities that their data centers cannot deliver because of scaling requirements or the ability to even develop fast and launch these applications. But then they also need to have type integration with their on-premise database for their core banking applications because they have or contain customer data. So what you see is that there's always that transition to a hybrid cloud by most of these customers. What I notice that most customers have asked for is a combination, especially for countries or regions where GDPR is really important, or data residency with regards to the shores of that country, the boundaries of that country come into play, is that they want to do private cloud if they can afford it, usually more expensive. But if they can't, then it's usually a mix of public and private. The more recent requests that we're now getting is for support on multi-cloud strategies. Again, because customers are trying to get the best of at least two clouds to ensure that they're optimizing their spend when it comes to consuming cloud services. So I haven't answered the question regarding recommendations because I think that's something that's very dependent based on where the bank is located. But at least I can tell you that with regards to banks that are fully in the cloud, they're usually in environments where the restrictions around where to host isn't country specific, it's more region specific. And that would be like in Europe, North America, Asia.
Just a little bit to add, just very recently, I've heard in one country, regulation authority started discussion about requirement for the financial institution to have technical abilities to move from one public cloud to another one in predefined period of time. That's kind of another interesting challenge coming.
And I think that's where your multi-cloud strategy needs to be, really solid, because I think, I see that there's a question here from Julian. All right, data localization to comply with various data. Yeah, exactly. So different types of regulations will determine the kind of cloud service provider that you connect with. And I think that's what's actually even driving, like the comments you made, Darius. That's what's really driving that multi-cloud strategy.
Yeah.
That if you have that, then it simplifies the way you move workload from one cloud provider to another.
Yeah. Now we have a cloud, and as per Gartner recent reports, cloud spend is growing steadily from 80 to 20% on a yearly basis, and also that's showing Statistica analytical tools. What are the main benefits of cloud services to customer? Why?
Well, obviously, I think at least if you just check kind of like the history of cloud and where it started from, even the invention of the EC2 within AWS had to do with scalability. They were growing at such a rate that required their supply chain process for procuring hardware to create those servers, install, prepare them, and then launch the application was just too long. And they needed a way to be able to consume those services quickly. So I would say the number one benefit is the ability to scale. Businesses can easily scale their computing resources up or down as needed, without having to worry about the purchasing process or procurement process for adding additional hardware. I think the second, of course, is cost savings, because with that scalability that you're getting, what that means is then you don't have to pay up front for hardware that you would most likely on average only consume about 50% of those resources. Yes, there will be peak periods, and as IT people, we would always size the server for the peak utilization. So if you size for peak utilization, for example, we'll use a banking environment where maybe they do their end of run at the end of the month. Then what that means is that for the rest of the month where those peak runs don't happen, essentially it's money that is down the drain. So it's about trying to understand what that average utilization is, and then of course you're only paying for what you use. And I think in my own personal opinion, cloud computing can be the most cost-effective approach for trying to deploy and consume services. I think the third on that list is flexibility, obviously, because again, the ability to be able to launch services as a when due, we talk about failing fast when it comes to developing applications. So the ability to do that, decide that the application isn't worth it and tear it down without, limiting yourself based on the cost of doing that deployment is something that businesses really need for their own agility as well. And then finally is accessibility. So yes, and I think this, especially in a place like Nigeria, where I'm from, where internet penetration is really, skyrocketing and accelerating at a great pace, but the average bandwidth to each user is limited. What that means is that it's extremely expensive for bank head offices or companies that need people to connect remotely to own that bandwidth to their own to their own data center. So that being in the cloud just ensures that everybody with their own bandwidth can just connect to a central location to access this. And I think that's something that businesses can benefit from. Those would be my top four.
In nowadays, if you kind of continue this topic, is very important sustainability. Everyone is talking about that. What is your view to sustainability of public cloud? Because I think this year in Europe, at least, enterprises will have an obligation to report on sustainability?
No, and great question on that. That's something that is really new, not just for cloud service providers like AWS, Oracle, Microsoft, but even businesses are having to report at board level on how they're able to deliver on sustainability goals. I'll speak on AWS because obviously that's my current employer, and I know that they do have what is called the climate pledge. That's AWS and about over 400 other businesses that have come together to try to meet those sustainability goals 10 years earlier than the 2050 date set by the Paris Accord. And some of the initiatives that AWS is putting in place to kind of assist that, obviously setting up that climate pledge. I think the second is achieving 100% renewable energy by 2025, which is 5 years earlier than their original pledge, that was 2030. Water positivity commitment by 2030, and then of course driving energy efficiency. So you'll hear a lot of announcements, and not just with AWS, but with other providers trying to look for more energy efficient silicon with regards to the servers that they build. Now, again, the goal of this is that if you remove a workload from an existing traditional data center and migrate that to the cloud, you're already hitting some of those sustainability goals. So that's a reason for moving to the cloud, another benefit of moving to the cloud. So for organizations who are trying to achieve that, there's a way to actually be able to get, as part of the assessment that is done in your migration, to show what the reduction is on your carbon footprint. Then, of course, providing our customers with tools that they can use to measure how they're achieving those set goals that they have for sustainability.
Now it's a bit kind of more intriguing topic. I think every one of you have seen a lot of newsletters, press releases about AGI, about ChatGPT, about kind of some official letters from big companies like, that's gonna destroy our world and we're gonna be screwed, lose a job, and etc. It's a big topic, yeah. What is the role of AI and ML and AGI in the cloud services? Because I think you know you can disclose more about that.
No, and thanks for that question. So it's really around, how are we able to use these types of capabilities in delivering value to customers. And what you find is a lot of cloud providers are increasingly integrating AI and ML tools into their services. For example, things like offering new ways of analyzing and deriving insights from the data that they have is one way that this is being used to help customers make better decisions in near real time, right? Another way is trying to ensure that you can obviously automate some processes, leveraging AI and ML algorithms. So there are different scenarios that are there to help you leverage this, but even within those cloud service providers, they are also using AI and ML to make recommendations around how you might be able to improve or optimize your utilization of cloud services as a way to save you money, for example, or as a way to achieve your goals faster with regards to the workloads. So yeah, it's something that is very, very intriguing. We're just at the start of it, I want to believe. And I think some of the initial benefits that you start seeing is generative AI with regards to how you can essentially have conversational engagements between IT within a computer and a human being. And you see, for example, banks using that in chatbots, for example, as a way to start testing out the capabilities of AI and ML.
Yeah, it's making a change, and Azure, for example, recently has announced that we are integrated into Azure AI, Open AI, ChatGPT-4. I know I'm a bit coming from Azure perspective,
No,
and
no, no, that's fine.
I know even companies who started to reorganize the daily operations using AI tools from a cloud, and that really brings an impact in terms of productivity.
I mean, things like robotic process automation,
Yeah.
that's one way to obviously look at how to benefit from AI and ML. And yes, you're absolutely right. Different customers are applying this in different ways.
Maybe you have you can recommend some AGI for daily use from a cloud, public cloud provider.
No. Obviously, ChatGPT, there are quite a few, but there are definitely different services that exist out there. I've seen a few that even my daughter uses for her homework. There are just a plethora of AI tools out there that you can use. A Google search will lead you to so many.
Yeah. Okay, we convinced that to use a cloud, yeah? That will increase your agility, flexibility, resiliency, security, compliance to the industry standards and ability to innovate and many benefits, yeah? But still up till now, when I participate in different forums, business forums, business people asking, okay, but you know what? What are the challenges and risks associated with cloud adoption in my company? It's still kind of risky and scary. Maybe you can, debunk these risks associated with public cloud adoption.
Yeah, great question. And I think this is kind of like, where once you make a pitch, you also have to share some of those caveats because it's important to ensure that the customer understands what they're getting into. Yes, while the cloud provides many benefits, it also comes with its own set of challenges and risks. One, of course, is security and compliance concerns. And again, of course, you have to look at that with the lens of the industry that you're in. The second piece, of course, is vendor locking. And there are a lot of ways to kind of use methods like, understanding the pricing policy of the organization as a way to then understand how you can get out of those contracts. So that's really important. And you get a lot of finance people trying to understand, at least from my own career, I've had a lot of finance people get involved in understanding exactly what those expectations will be for spend with regards to cloud consumption. And then the one that is the most common question that we get is around potential downtime or data loss. And then finally is change management. So if you think about any form of transition that you're going through, and cloud is kind of up there when it comes to what it entails, is you have to think about the people, the process that will change, and then of course understand the technology. So if you're looking at evaluating your cloud solution provider, these are the concerns that you need to understand how that provider will help you mitigate when engaging them.
Actually, we haven't prepared that, but you brought to my mind one thing which has happened 2 days ago, actually. One data center in I think in Strasbourg is on fire in Europe, and I know that some customers, some companies are, what to say, drinking now some medicine. Because it's really how customers, if you take an ideal situation, if customers on cloud can absorb outage, such kind of huge data centers on fire.
No, and I think that's a great question. So obviously there's the inherent nature of cloud architectures to provide high availability, right? So I'll use my knowledge of, obviously AWS, where each availability zone is made up of a minimum of 3 data centers. And those 3 data centers must be at least 100 kilometers away from each other. Again, just to avoid any natural disasters that, might occur close to one. So that ensures that once you pick that particular availability zone as where you want your service to run, then there's some form of level of high availability. But then there's the support that is provided in AWS. Is referred to as well architected, I forget the last name, but essentially talking about specific cloud architecture framework that you need to follow to ensure that you build in high availability, and you can scale that up to different levels. Obviously, there's a fee for that, where even though you've picked a local zone, you might want to pick some other local zone in a different region to be able to deliver that service should there be an issue with specific regions. And I think that's where you can work with your cloud service provider to deliver on.
Yeah, that's true. That's real case which I mentioned 2 days ago. It's OVH.
Oh wow!
Big data center is clear. Kind of one of them is burned down in France. Okay. Let's move on.
Yes.
On managed services topics.
Yes. So, and thanks for the questions on the cloud computing. I think it's important to kind of understand, just from a cloud managed services perspective. Obviously, people are adopting the cloud, accelerating, and I think you talked about the pace at which customers are adopting the cloud year on year. What would you say is the cloud center of excellence that companies seem to want to set up as they embark on this journey to the cloud?
Just, I will introduce myself. My name is Darius. I'm coming from Dova team, as Julian presented, and I started my cloud journey by establishing a cloud center of excellence in a startup company, helping companies to adopt the cloud at the early beginning of the journey. And our CCOE has evolved into managed service provider company, who've been serving and helping not only with a journey to the cloud, but also supporting clouds for multiple companies. Now, if we come back to the question about Cloud Center of Excellence, it's often in a big enterprise team or a group of experts dedicated and responsible to drive organizational and technology change to adopt cloud. Because in an enterprise, you start with, you need new skills, new views, and new trends built in organization in order to adopt the cloud. And of course, investments, change management, a lot of technology changes. And if it's kind of organizational unit, which drives and moves things into the clouds, and also people change part. What they do normally, they develop best practices, they develop and of course govern policies, creating guidelines, creating automation components using often Terraform code or ARM code. They providing guidance and trainings to other teams to how to develop cloud native applications. Or, for example, after a migration to the clouds, because often is used lift and shift approach, just take and move, but that doesn't allow to use all the cloud benefits. Then we helping teams to innovate and re-engineer application. They also developing different monitoring, performance, FinOps part. FinOps, by the way, is coming very important discipline in enterprises, because when you start use the cloud, your spend and invoice growing fast, and you want to take control in place, and when's where FinOps coming in to help for big organizations to keep it in a control. And of course, you need to continuously keep up to date, innovate, update, and move forward. That
Okay.
CCOE organization is more about adoption and innovation, helping company to adopt cloud.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. I think, according to Gartner, the growth of cloud managed services is about 18 to 20% year over year. And based on based on the definition of CCOE from a cloud center of excellence perspective, what would you say is, first of all, the definition for managed services, and then how do you differentiate that value to customers?
Probably everyone has been using outsourcing or kind of managed service. Going to restaurant, going to coffee, or any service from any company. The cloud managed service model, it's external provider who is providing you service in an efficient way, cost-effective, defined way, secure, compliant, and so on and so on. Everything is kind of defined from resourcing perspective, tooling, process, and so on. You know what you're going to get at the end. And often CCOE is complemented with cloud managed services in order to continue operations using, of course, SLAs and etc. is involved from contracting perspective, but also we need to take into account cloud managed service approach. They are normally using DevOps approach, continuously automating, improving, rationalizing your existing workloads, and also ensuring compliance, security, compliance to different industry standards, and also from security perspective. Managed services used in a few areas: infrastructure management, application management, security compliance management, support activities 24/7, like a common center approach to according to the SLAs, as Julian mentioning, and they are providing automations, which in my case, for example, it is embedded into daily work. Whatever we find out as repetitive response to some problem, we automate and remove from manual activities. That's kind of my short version of managed services definition, what we're providing to customers. But yeah, that's interesting journey. In terms of what is interesting in trend in terms of we grow, it's as per Gartner, it's growing 20% something every year. In my experience, if you look at the really automated managed service, it's growing really fast, and
Oh, wow.
it's like that. Because they have a challenge: resources, cloud engineers. It's limited resources. And companies, more companies go into cloud, more challenging is to support that workload in a more efficient way.
No, that makes absolute sense. And I think you touch on why a lot of customers are taking this approach, especially the automated one, again, because of that dearth of skills in the market. Yeah, thanks for sharing. So with regards to what you've spoken about now, sorry, did you want to comment on something else?
No, it's yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's people,
all right.
yeah, resources. Yeah, that's
Okay. With regards to kind of compliance, and we spoke about that when we talked about, cloud computing and how compliance and security is a risk or challenge for customers to adopt the cloud. How do you address MSP compliance and regulation challenges for customers?
That's a very interesting topic. MSP in nowadays is very heavily regulated, just in generic term, yeah. Because you're providing service to company, And as I think Julian has mentioned, and you mentioned that, for example, banking industry need to comply to certain standards and regulations. That means you as a cloud managed service provider need also to comply to the same standards and regulatory requirements. It's really challenge because you are handling multiple customers from multiple industries, because from technology perspective, for me, it doesn't matter what type of company. It's financial service or chain of factories, or it's TCO or whatever. We take all industry standards, what is possible, what cloud can support, and we are making compliance to these standards. For example, we are I will give you example from my experience. We are compliant to multiple industry standards like Azure Expert MSP, AWS MSP, GCP MSP, ISO 27001 from security perspective, GDPR, data protection standard, ISAE 3402 type 2 as a service provider, ISO 22301, PCI DSS, and it's multiple standards from industry perspective, which directly kind of not impacting us, but indirectly we must comply to that in order to provide right level of service to the customer. In another way, it's because I'm really into automation about more than 20 years, and we figure out with one vendor automated certification. We use a lot of automation, a lot of automated workflows in order to ensure and provide compliance of our services. And of course, that means I can provide very efficient evidences for auditors. For auditors, it's easy to do their job, and so on and so on and so on. I think we are running out of the time.
Yes. I
and
think so
I
too.
think let's go for the questions, because we need to figure out also what topics we can continue further.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. It was. I think it was really cool to see you guys talking, and I've taken as well some notes, some questions. Maybe we can start the Q&A from the audience here. Riaz, you had I think one question posted.
Yeah. I think this is actually for both Darius and Dola. So in the banking world, you've got a lot of these regulatory requirements, and we're now meeting a lot of challenger banks that want to work in private cloud, public cloud, but they've got worries about the country restrictions, regulatory restrictions, security, everything you alluded to, all the standards. Is there a checklist provided by either the cloud managed service provider or by AWS, so you can run through that, with the client and give them the confidence?
I want Darius to answer this first, just from a managed services perspective. But yes, I'll talk about what AWS and some other cloud service providers do to support.
Okay.
Darius?
Actually, I can talk through on behalf of three clouds, Google, AWS, and Azure. Yeah. All of them are providing checklist, very detailed checklist of descriptions, even what is expected as evidence, and that really helps. In addition to that, what we do, and it's kind of our invention probably, we do mapping, because we mapped a lot of standards, and when you do mapping, for example, by doing one action, you probably accommodate requirements from 3 or 4 standards. That's
no, I think I like how you started that, like, Darius. Yes, it is true. At least I know, just working at AWS and Microsoft, that there is a checklist for every compliance requirement. And in some organizations, at least I've seen that happen at AWS, where members of the team are available to work with the customer around either developing the application with the right architecture that meets those requirements, or going with the customer. And I think this has happened at Oracle as well, where we can go to the customer to the regulator with the customer to try and go through, understanding what those requirements are, answer technical questions regarding, the capability of the cloud to meet those regulatory requirements. So yes, there are tools and capabilities in place to support customers as they try to deliver their services while not contravening any of those regulatory requirements.
Fantastic, yeah. And just a slight corollary to that is, do you have any bank that's in multi-jurisdiction, multi-cloud, multi-hybrid environment? Can you talk to any client or?
Thanks.
I mean, I can't speak to the name of the customer, but yes,
You do,
I know I'm working with customers who are having a multi-cloud strategy in multiple geographies. So we're talking Americas, Asia, and Africa. And yes, they're running cloud services. But I think the one that is most restrictive, I don't want to use the word restrictive, but it's not at that maturity level where things are really clear and spelt out for you to follow. Is still on the African continent. So for example, in Europe, you have GDPR, and once you're meeting that, then you're compliant. Similarly, in Americas, they have their own regulatory requirements. So yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and actually, for example, I can add a little bit about that. The banks, which is multi-continental in multiple countries, they often, and I haven't seen a big bank not choosing multi-cloud strategy. They are often going multi-cloud. We even not a two or sometimes three. And they also, I have heard in one company, they assessing cloud concentration risk. What does that mean? For example, one vendor probably, how to say, concentrated in one region, has most of the markets, and now one in another region, and they handling by balancing that.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I think we have a certain challenger bank that's in that situation right now. So I know what you're talking about. Okay, no, thank you for that, Darius.
I had one question for you, Darius. You talk about automation of certification, right?
Yeah.
Can you expand on this?
It's actually simple. Yeah. Probably in a business automation, you use the tools like workflows, BPM, some robotics, AI, and etc. Yeah. What is certification or compliance? Yeah. In a traditional world, you have a risk manager with Excel. Yeah. And we replaced Excel. It's forbidden to use Excel. It's really funny because we replaced Excel with a tool, with platform, which has embedded workflows. It has kind of embedded policy integrated in that tool. All the policies are embedded into the tool, and risk management, awareness, all this compliance cycle is embedded into this tool. And you get one place where you provide all the evidences to the auditor. Not only auditor or management. For example, for me, for manager of a company, I need to know what the hell is happening. What is my situation? Yeah, in a very efficient way. I just access and red, green, or amber. Yeah.
Policy and process repository.
It's a policy, process, workflows, integrations with your infrastructure. In terms of access management, some reviews are also done automatically through that tool, and so on and so on. That's that I call automated certification. And if you Google automated certification, you will find a vendor.
Okay.
I think Google knows everything.
Yes. Any question from Armand or Simon, Varut? Anyone else? Abdulaziz?
Very good, thank you.
No?
I have a question, if that's allowed. Sorry.
Yes.
Coming back to the financials, in the enterprise world, at least in the Netherlands, where I'm from, progress of cloud is a bit hampered by the fact that there is a bit of a challenge to make a straightforward business case, financial business case, for migration to the cloud of say the really enterprise companies, so the really big companies, partly because they already are so big that they can have some of the advantages that cloud computing has from nature by nature. Partly because if you supply the services, I would say freely, it's very difficult to control them afterwards.
Mm.
So is that something that is also that you also see in other countries? And do you have any, I wouldn't say school solutions, but is there a way to approach that a bit easier? Because it's really hampering. So migrate, and then I'm talking about migrating like for like. So lift and shift the time of approach, and because for improvement, innovations, the business case looks totally different. But really for this.
So I can respond to that. Yes, you're absolutely right. And it's not just for the big banks. If you do a lift and shift of workloads from an existing data center to the cloud, depending at the point at which you're doing that lift and shift, the cloud may not be the right option for you. And that's just because from a total cost of ownership perspective, it just doesn't make commercial sense. Where you see banks and organizations considering moving to cloud is around the modernized phase of transitioning. So we're re-architecting an application, or we're refactoring an application to be able to get the benefits of either cost reduction or innovation. So for example, some banks in Nigeria are looking at, moving some applications that they have around lending to the cloud because of the capability to leverage cloud services that do automatic facial recognition as a way to validate their credentials, KYC. So that's a process that ideally with their on-premise systems could take weeks for them to validate. Just because their systems are in silos, they need to integrate with government parastatals to be able to validate that data and then come back to confirm that the person that is requesting a loan is the person that they're giving the loan to. But to be able to respond quickly and to be able to, if a customer comes onto your platform and is looking for a loan, is going to take that loan from the person that can give him that loan, him or her that loan on time. So it's about speed to market. And for that reason, they will migrate that portion of that workload to be able to, acquire that customer or that business quickly. So it's around modernization. And, you can talk about it from a perspective of refactoring, as I said. So for example, trying to, if the application is using, legacy databases that are usually very expensive, and you want to now refactor that same application to use some other type of database, then that could be a reason for migration. And if it's modernized where you're re-architecting the application in a way that it takes advantage of the services that are inherent in the cloud services as opposed to building that up yourself, then that's another reason to migrate. But if it's lift and shift, then yeah, in some cases, it's not just the best. The only time that you find people wanting to go that way is if they're thinking of either going to buy the hardware or they're, and that's for new applications, is really not from a lift and shift perspective. I don't know if that answers your question, Armand.
Just to add to this business case, I kind of from big enterprise perspective, I know that one company had the same challenge. They made a financial only business case, but not taking into account security point of view. And after, because it was cheaper to build kind of zero data centers and have own capacity. But after ransomware, they decided not to do it. we had a security huge incident breach, and which we couldn't handle internally.
Okay. Thanks.
I don't know, Arman, did you get your answer of this, or you want to expand?
Yeah, I got the answer, and I'm aware of the fact that indeed, when you start doing modernization, refactoring, the 6 options of AWS, but all the others have their own. What you see is that sometimes that is a bit of a step too far, and then so as a first step you want to do that lift and shift, but it never works because basically you're stuck in the middle. So it's you have to do lift and shift because otherwise it's too complicated, and lift and shift is not financially attractive. So at the end of the day, they, at least now you see that they do nothing, which is even the worst.
Yeah, I've come across this in the Netherlands actually, right, Armand, with ING.
But
one of my
I saw
clients.
That was
another
a complex migration, but yeah.
Another example is sometimes companies are keeping what they have as a legacy, and whatever is new, we're building on a cloud.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
that's another approach. And when your kind of application system is going near the end of your life, you're building new on a cloud. That's a bit complicated approach also, because you need to clean the house.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Integration becomes also very challenging.
Yes, and yeah.
Absolutely.
Then you build kind of some integration bus to accommodate that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Armand. Thank you, everyone. So, any other questions? We have 3 minutes left. I know that most of the guys, they know cloud and been in this field for years. So, but yeah, I mean, we have recorded the session for the others who could not attend. We'll distribute that one. Maybe just 2 minutes round table. Riaz, any more question for the guys?
No, I'm good. Yeah, it's a good session. Thanks a lot for that.
Thank you. I think Simon.
Just a question for me. What you would recommend? Which topic is the most burning for you, for example, and most interesting for you to kind of deep dive?
Next topic.
For me, for me, is migration. From this is what I
that question
all the time, and is a little bit hindering the cloud adoption in many customers, because we're talking to at the moment, they're scared. Let's put it this way. And we don't have, most of the time, we don't have the migration utilities that are required to automate, right? So that's failing most of the time.
Makes sense.
Okay. Thank you to everybody who attended. I mean, it was very helpful. And stay tuned. And thanks to Adeola and Darius for your time. I know it's Friday. Almost everybody is out, for the weekend. Next time we'll do a session on Thursdays.
Okay, thank you.
Suggested, guys. Okay. Have a great weekend. It was really cool to see you guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.